organization that we're proud to be involved with. Equipment that you're going to need tonight is real simple. This is a cocktail shaker used for shaking cocktails. Boston cocktail shaker set, you might have one that has a glass on one side and a tin on the other. This is two tins together. And we use that to kind of shake our ingredients together, get them good and cold, get a little dilution in there from some water. But if you don't have that, Haley reminded me when we were catching up about using Tupperware for that sort of purpose. And I was thinking, oh, I always have these deli cups, and I have done that in a pinch at a tailgate to make a daiquiri. You can just put your ingredients in here and seal that and shake when we're shaking with the shaker, okay? You'll want some kind of strainer. This is the Hawthorne strainer that goes with a shaking tin. Tea strainer can come in quite handy as well. To measure out our drinks in the bar, we use these tools called Jiggers, and they're compound measurements. The largest one's 2 ounces, and there's lots of little gradations in them. That really helps us go quickly when we're building rounds of different drinks, so we can bang them out for you. At home, if you don't have these, there's a great tool in almost every kitchen I've ever been in, measuring spoons. And all you have to remember is a tablespoon is half an ounce. So if that recipe says 1.5 ounces of something, that's 3 tablespoons. It says 3/4 of an ounce, that's 1.5 tablespoons. It's really pretty foolproof. And this is a very accurate tool. We just don't use it in the bar that much because it's just a little slower than we usually want to be. Tonight, some tongs or tweezers will come in handy. Foreshadowing. You'll need a little something to make juice. So this is a pretty simple press to keep on hand. A reamer works. If you have the little orange juice plate that we all grew up with, and if all else fails, you can cut fruit up and squeeze it to make juice. Again, you're making 1 or 2 cocktails at a time, so don't have to be too built for speed. I always have a cutting board and a knife handy. And tonight I'm going to do a little surprise garnish piece, and I'm going to use my peeler to do that. I love to have a plate handy too, for if I am making garnish to put off to the side, and you'll see a very specific use of that today. Glassware is important. We're going to be making a champagne cocktail, and I really love to do that in a flute, little funnel of love. It kind of concentrates the drink, keeps it flowing up, looks like an elegant science experiment. But that drink also works really well in a wine glass and a coupe glass, as do the French 75 that we'll be making after the champagne cocktail. And if you don't have stemware, trusty rocks glass will do you right. You'll probably won't use ice in the champagne cocktail, but you may even end up drinking your French 75 on the rocks, who knows? So that's what you need for equipment. As far as ingredients go, to make the champagne cocktail, you're going to need champagne. We say champagne, what was it? Churchill wrote, actually, I cannot live without champagne. In victory, I deserve it. In defeat, I need it. Words for trying times, right? The thing about champagne to just keep in mind as an ingredient, when we say champagne as a wine, it's a very specific sparkling wine from a region in France. In the bar and restaurant, champagne means champagne. But when you say champagne cocktails, that sort of kicks open the door to a whole other world, really sparkling cocktails, where we use cava and prosecco and even fine American sparkling wines. The thing to keep in mind is you want them a bit on the drier side, because if you're making cocktails with them, you're throwing a little sugar in the mix. And besides that, we're going to need sugar cubes. We're going to need Angostura bitters tonight. We're going to need some gin. And if you don't have gin or don't like gin, maybe some light rum or vodka. Some simple syrup, which is 1-to-1 sugar and water, and lemons. And I think that is everything we're going to need. So listen, the first time I met Haley was through her writing, which has all the wit and charm that she has in person. You may have seen her at Shore Leaves Sippin' Santa in years past, or way back in the day at Park. But I'm just proud to have her here today. We have been meaning to catch up and have a virtual drink, and tonight it is happening. Haley, how the heck are you?
I'm super good. I'm a little awkward on Zoom, but other than that, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Par for the course this year, I guess, right? So, hey, I wanted to mention real quick, You've been doing a little bit of writing, but you're out of work as a bartender right now. So I wanted to tell everybody they can hit your tip jar. Your Venmo is at Haley Love Hamilton. Look out, there it is. QR code right there on the screen. Be kind to Haley, and she'll be kind to you, I promise. So what else have you been up to? You're not behind the bar these days, but what have you been doing?
I'm not behind the bar. So what have I been doing? Wow, I've been sleeping a lot, which is actually been kind of nice. I also was super lucky to, per the writing stuff, I actually got into a year-long writing class in January for like, let's finish a book together. So it's me and 10 other incredible women through an organization called Catapult. And like this year fucking sucked. Sorry, let's be the only one. This year was terrible, but I wrote a book. So that was super cool. We meet every Sunday. It gives me structure, which has been really nice. I'm incredibly lucky to have a wonderful roommate, and my wonderful roommate happens to have a dog. So I am officially Auntie Haley to one very spoiled rescue creature named Maggie. And yeah, that's otherwise my house is really clean.
Well, hey, let's get a drink. Should we get a drink in our hand and then we can keep talking?
Yeah, let's do that.
So we're going to do a champagne cocktail. This one looks almost like a very easy kind of little science experiment. We're going to start with sugar cube. I'm going to put it on a plate here. Sometimes on the bar, we'll put it in a jigger or some other tool. That's to kind of keep down on the mess. And I'm going to dash away with some bitters. See, the plate kind of catches that. You can see the cubes soaking them up. Now, while that's happening, I'm going to do two things real quick. That lemon that you're going to use with Haley in a little bit, if you have a chance, just take a little peel off of it and leave it to the side. That's our secret bonus garnish for the evening. And then for this drink, what I like to do is pour a little of this wine right in the glass. You know how sparkling wine, right when you open it, and I'm using this lovely dry cava that was in the kits that some of you got. We'll want to leap out of there. But if I can do that first pour, leaving myself a little bit of room, I can now, this is what the tweezers or tongs are for, drop that, whoop, right on in. Now this is, you know, sugar and bitters and wine, a very simple, elegant cocktail. And I can top it up the rest of the way. And as they say, what do they say, Haley? Huzzah!
Huzzah! Yes.
Now, I don't always serve this with a twist, and I don't like anything to interfere with the almost like just lean elegance of this drink. But a little lemon oil in the air is just such a cheery thing. I am going to use that peel and do just a touch of garnish up above, just to kind of catch my nose and lift my spirits and get me raring to go. All right. Ooh. Cheers to you, dear.
Indeed. It's been a
Cheers, friends.
Cheers, friends.
Well, you're not in the industry as actively these days, Haley, but what do you hear out there? Have you been out a bit? Have you been to any places that you think have got it right in this particular time?
I've been out a little bit. I was actually, well, let's keep it local. So I did a quick jaunt to Portland, Maine, and things are going well there. Places locally, I feel like we just.
Did you visit with our friends at Hunt and Alpine when you were up there?
Did.
Yeah.
I certainly did. Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying they seem to be working every angle of it, taking care of their staff and their community, and really fighting for us all to be safe and supported. You know.
Great out there. So places I feel like are doing something similar. Trina's in Somerville is always kind of at the forefront of, you know, taking care of staff, also making sure their guests are safe, making sure everyone feels welcome. I know the folks at Parmesan and their sister spots, Shore Leave, which I haven't kept up, but I mean, that was the rum dungeon, you know, like as was called. So I know there was some patio experimentation. I feel like this time of year, I'm not sure if short leave is actually up and running. I know that Black Lamb is. I mean, if I go out, it's usually takeout.
Yeah.
It's go pick up a meal. I don't like not like sitting at tables, but I really, really miss being able to sit at the bar. And
Hmm.
that was just really kind of like why I would go out.
Yeah.
It's a different experience. It's a really great experience. And we just can't do that right now.
Yeah, the patio season was like, you felt like you could kind of dip your toe in the water a little bit. And of course, we pushed really hard. A lot of us were active. You
Yeah.
posted and reposted often under our hashtag Cocktails for Commonwealth, which got us cocktails to go, which I've been doing a little bit of too, which is, gotta say, I mean, I know how to make a drink at home, but I don't always want to. So it's nice to be able to just stop by, and it gives you that moment of, even if you can't like walk in and really ask how it's going, it gives you that moment on the pickup of just like checking in, seeing that smiling face behind the mask. So
Yeah. There's so much of it's about the exchange because, like you said, like I can make a decent drink at home. I know what I need. I can pick up the things. I have the tools. But I mean, like what's really important and special about bars is the back and forth and the go between, and that's really tough to recreate right now.
yeah, it's really why we're gonna come roaring back. I'm sure of it. People are saying this will kill it forever. I was, oh no, this is just penting up demand, that's going to come crashing out once we can all be mixing together. And, we've talked about it. We love to make great drinks. We think that's important. We just, we know that the essence of being in a bar, though, is something kind of beyond that. And I've really seen that in the virtual space. I mean, it's just been very interesting to see people reaching out to have like bartenders do virtual stuff with them. And I really don't think it's because, I mean, they have to make the drinks. It's not
Yeah.
so much for, that part of it. It is all this little gift of gab and conversation that we all miss so much, and that I'm enjoying having with you right now.
Yeah.
Did you know that this cocktail was in the movie Casablanca?
I didn't actually. This is so I am so pop culturally challenged, and I know that that's a classic at this point, but I've never seen Casablanca. I'm
Right?
really sorry.
It's adorbs if when you get a chance. But the only other actual cocktail that they make in Casablanca besides the champagne cocktail is, wait for it, a
Right?
French 75.
Yes.
Who knew, right? A little
Who
research goes a
knew?
long way. So why don't you take us through how you like to make that drink at home, and how to make sure that we make it awesome every time.
Yeah, absolutely. So French 75 to me is just like the best classic cocktail. It has everything you really need. It has bubbles, it has a little bit of citrus, and it still has hard alcohol in it, which is not to, like not the champagne cocktail or say that everyone needs to get ripped every time they drink. Like it is a really fun way to still enjoy maybe like the punch of a cocktail in something that is like built to be sippable. So I'm gonna go ahead and start building. I have cocktail tins to do so. Um, I also have this lovely simple syrup that came in the box. If you don't have this, simple syrup is 1-to-1 proportions, same amount of sugar, same amount of water, heat it up, stir it till all the sugar dissolves, you're good. But for this right now, I'm gonna go ahead and start with a ½ ounce, and I have a jigger. If you don't, Jackson said it's a tablespoon. Yes?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So I have my ½ ounce of simple that goes in there. And then we actually had this conversation the other day. In quarantine, I have been saying that half a lemon is like close enough to ½ an ounce. And it turns out I'm not wrong. And I did that earlier. So if you want to, I'm gonna do it right. But if you want to just go ahead and squeeze ½ a lemon into what you're making as a drink, it'll work. I promise. I tested it earlier. So we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go straight in.
I love that. I love that. I actually juiced my lemon early and kind of let it just rest up a little bit, but I'm gonna do that next time for
All right.
sure. It's
I'm going
funny. I went and checked, and I juiced 4 halves of lemon to make this exactly 2-ounce bottle. So you're not wrong.
No, I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. I love that. Okay, so that goes in there, and then whatever gin folks are working with, I currently I have Greylock gin, but I have to Berkshire Mountains.
Fun.
Local.
Awesome. I'm
Yeah.
using Ford's, which is a London Dry. I'm really partial to London Dries. Like, if you're out there, you and have Beefeater or the Botanist or Bombay White Label, you may have gotten some of that great Aviation and New American gin in your kits. I think some of you may have gotten Citadel, which is a fun, funky French, well-textured gin. It's whatever your favorite is. And again, to anybody afraid of gin, I mean, Haley and I would say don't be afraid, but you know, if you want to use a little vodka, go for it.
Yeah.
You know?
No, all that'll work. And honestly, yeah, gin, I think one of the fun things for me is that almost all of them are a little bit different, but they all blend really well. So there we go, there's with gin. We now add ice. I'm very excited. I remembered to make and have. How much ice, Jackson? Because I feel like this can be a point of contention.
Just enough. You know, it's funny. It's in the bar. It's a scoop, which is like about like 8 ounces. Which for me, I'm using you know, these very close to kind of 1x1 cubes out of a tray, and I'm just going to do 4 of these. But you know, it's enough to pulverize it, get it cold. Once the temperature starts going down, the geeks tell me that the dilution amount is more a product of time, and you can't get it too diluted by using too much ice. But if you fill the shaker too much, you don't leave yourself enough room to go around. And if your ice is really small, it's all going to melt. So be careful, you know?
Yeah. So I guess a good one is like you want like small icebergs in your tin.
Did you use an ounce of gin? I used an ounce of gin.
I did use an ounce of gin.
An ounce of gin.
Yes. All right, and now we go and we shake. Yeah.
Ah! Always the best part.
In a while. You went so much longer than I am.
What's that?
I said you went so much longer than I did. Should I have gone longer? No?
I just till it's cold, you know?
All right. So first 75s for me, I have always built just like Jackson's doing. You pour your cocktail, that's what we have in here, into your glass and then top it with sparkling.
Mm-hmm.
I have also definitely overflowed like 9,000 flutes doing this. So new thing I have learned is actually if you start with your sparkling, because the cocktail is heavier, unless you're shooting, you can't see that, I'm sorry, there we go. Unless you actually like volumetrically overflow, it's not gonna fizz up on you. Just barely. But I guess I did it. Yay.
Yeah, you did.
Yes. But one of the interesting things about like sparkling wine is less dense than that gin, sugar, lemon that we added. So if you're doing these really fast, like I have a lot of times at work, especially on New Year's Eve, and you just really like got it crank and you're pouring, let's say you build like 4 of those in one and you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you add your wine really fast because you're busy, it's gonna overflow and that's a bummer. So starting with your wine and then pouring the cocktail on top, it's much harder to overflow your glass. Not that it's impossible, but it's harder.
It's also at home if it's like, you know, you're 2 people and you're trying to make 6 of these for your friends, right? You can sort of be like assembly line it and have like one person pour the wine out while somebody measures the cocktail. And that way, like not one person isn't stuck slaving away trying to make these one at a time, you know? So I find that since it's a fairly small amount in the shaker, that 1 ounce of gin, ½ ounce lemon, ½ ounce sugar, well, I can fit like 3 or 4 of those in the shaker and still get it aerated and diluted and all mixed together, right? So, but this trick about pouring out the wine first is so awesome, you know, like that's a real that's a real clever way to make sure that, you know, they're also mixed, you know, very similarly. So
Yeah, because the wine, so another fun thing about that, because it's heavier, like it'll actually mix it for you in the glass. So not that you would need or want to like stick a straw and do any stirring once the wine is on top of your cocktail, but like doing this on top, it's kind of like diving into a pool. It just goes and it mixes everything for you. That's
let's
a
try it. Let's
professional
give it a
trick.
try. Do you have
Yeah.
some?
Cheers. Oh yeah.
You know, I mentioned Casablanca because in part it's like the cocktail's in there in a real subversive way. Like who orders it? It's all kind of written. It's Joycean in the level of meaning of who orders it and when and what it means. Do you remember the first time you heard the origin story on the French 75?
I do, and it's funny because having done further research, now I know that my first encounter with the origin story is actually wrong.
Well, some things are too good to check. But what was your first? What was your first story? What was the first story about it you
The
heard?
first story I heard was the French 75 was after a World War II bomber because, you know, drops down, death, destruction.
And when you did a little research on it, what did you find?
It is named after a World War I rifle. So the French 75 was a 75 milliliter, like very light, very carry ready, could fire 15 rounds a minute, which World War I was, you know, technology. And it was meant to be just like very precise, very deadly. Which if
That's
you
it.
drink
So
these
that's it.
fast,
That's interesting. Well, that's so you drink them too fast, the same thing happens. I always heard it that if you drank too many of them, you would get a headache, not unlike the one you had by being too close to the famous gun when it was fired.
oh,
And it's interesting because, you know, it's GIs going to France, right? So it's culture mixing experience, having like kind of light kind of wine-based cocktails at some point somewhere, and then home trying to re-engineer them, reaching for gin. It probably was with brandy originally. They still do them that way in towns that have like strong French roots, like New Orleans or Montreal. And so it's kind of fun. It didn't lend itself to the endless using of 75 to mean a champagne drink, which kind of burned us all out. Like a bourbon 75 doesn't really make sense, but the the fact that, you know, people want that story to go with the experience of sometime having a drink is still so very much alive, right? You know, so it's one of my favorites to drink. It's also like fun to hear various permutations of the stories that go with drinks. You know,
yeah, I think it's great. It's because it's one that like truly is a classic, but the classic recipe that we think of, like if you order a French 75 today, this is what you're getting. In 1927, you had like a 50-50 shot. You were either getting this or you were getting what the original 1915 recipe was, which was gin, applejack, lemon, and grenadine. So you were getting like a
almost
pink,
like a daisy. Yeah. You
yeah.
know?
And like I'm not gonna lie, I like that this version took over. I enjoyed
Right.
it.
Right. Well, that's a funny thing about drink names. We could go off on a rabbit hole. We won't, about the Cosmopolitan, how it was invented by two different people and the two different drinks and won out. Names as good as the Corpse Reviver had a harder time of it because people just wanted to keep reusing them. So there's the 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we know of. But now that we know how to make a French 75 at home, what are some great other classic variations you'd recommend for people to try?
Oh, some good sparklings. So I love an airmail, which is very similar but built with rum and lime and honey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. So yeah, the rum lime honey with a little bit of sparkling is great. I do love the champagne cocktail. It's just, it opens up just a glass of sparkling wine in a really fun way. Sure, you've got some sugar to add some sweetness, but Angostura bitters is just such a classic, like, I'm drinking a cocktail now, which is really, really fun.
Hey,
Uh,
I'm getting a couple of questions coming in on the chat. Can I throw a few your ways and
Please
my ways?
do.
You just mentioned Angostura bitters. How would you explain those to somebody, and what do they do when you use those in cocktails?
So bitters are kind of like the spice rack for bartenders. There's three classics that have been around for hundreds of years at this point. So you've got Angostura, and then Peychaud's and Regan's Orange, and those really you know what, like if you're making macaroni and cheese and you're like, oh, this is good, but it needs something, and then you put salt on it and you're like, oh yeah, that's better, and then maybe you put pepper on it and then that's what you want. Like if a cocktail is missing something, one of the first things you want to think about is there a bitter component? Like, does it have bitters in it? So bitters have exploded for the range of what's possible with flavors. Um, but if you make a drink at home and you're like, it needs something, bitters almost always helps.
Yeah, I joke that I put a little Peychaud's in my cereal, because it's like pink sauce. It just
Yeah,
it picks everything up. But I loved your point about kind of, for want of a better word, the catalytic quality of bitters too, right? They salt in a recipe isn't something that you taste. It's something that helps you taste other things. And bitters do exactly that in almost every way that they're used. Um, a question that I'm going to have to take is somebody's asking about the Eau Provence, an Eastern Standard cocktail that was on our opening menu in 2005.
and
It's a fun little take on a gimlet, right? It's vodka with lime juice, and then for the simple syrup, we just infuse tarragon into the simple syrup, so it gives you that lovely kind of like, it's not so strong as, like, it's not an anise flavor like black licorice. It's a little bit like more flavorful and robust and light and fresh. And yeah, we made a lot of those over the years. I think those can be a couple different proportions. It was sort of a 2, 1, 3/4. I think was the spec, 2 ounces of vodka, an ounce of citrus, and 3/4 of the simple, because it was a pretty concentrated sweetener to make that balance out. But that's the name of that one. And hey, really quick, kind of tagging off of those herbs, people are asking like what herbs to experiment with in their cocktails. Because I actually think throwing something in a French 75 in the shaker is a great thing. I do that with the bee's knees all the time.
right.
Would you do that by season or by taste, or what would your approach to that be?
I mean, I always think if you're gonna add herbs to a cocktail, you definitely want them to be fresh. So that might depend on seasonality, but honestly, like looking at this now, I would throw thyme in here in an instant. Uh,
Right.
yeah. I mean, you can go lavender too, and that way can also be fun. You can make a simple syrup with herbs in it. Like I feel like that's what you were saying.
Right. Well, that's what that drink is. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can make an herb infused simple syrup by literally just making your 1-to-1 sugar to water, and then you throw some fresh herbs in, stir for a while, let her cool, and like taste until you think it's good.
Yeah, no, and then that gives you kind of your house recipe, right, for a French 75. There was a question, somebody had been to the Ritz in London and had their variation on the champagne cocktail, which I am doing from memory, but I think is just adds a little bit of grapefruit bitters. So just like pushing around on those citrus flavors, and then they garnish it with the maraschino cherry because, why wouldn't you?
Why not? Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody likes a sweet finish. So
More
well,
questions coming in?
yeah, I'm just checking the chat. Uh, is there a general rule? This is a fun question. Let's ponder this for a second. For cutting the proportions of the alcohol in a cocktail,
Mhm.
so that you still maintain the overall flavor profile of the drink. And they're fumbling a little around with some ideas, more ice, less sweet, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, I would just be like, it's math.
Yeah.
Take everything down with it. But
Mhm.
I don't know if that's exactly what they're asking. I think this is a fun drink. This is a Collins with when you sub soda water for the wine, so that's got quite a lot less alcohol.
Mhm.
Any other suggestions for you know, maybe partially dry January kind of vibe?
Yeah, sure. So I was thinking the same thing, is you should just take everything down by half, and then, but then, like you said, your top is also alcohol. You could take the cocktail ingredients, so the simple syrup, the lemon, and the gin by half, and then you could hit that with soda and a little bit of sparkling wine, make it like a spritz,
It's like
which
a
is,
skinny. Yeah.
yeah.
That's, yeah. Yeah, I like to look for when I'm trying to drink a little less too, right? That's not skinny, that's spritz. It's like we're debating the angels on the head of a pin.
Mhm.
Um, but that, you know, that's like why I love drinks like that, kind of Aperol spritz and such, for that sort of vibe, because it's like full flavor, a little bit of fruit, a lot of fair amount of bitter, so you drink it slow, and you know, less alcohol. So you're good to go through the day. We did have a question: if you don't have a sugar cube, can you make this cocktail? And you sure can. This is what my champagne cocktail looks like after, you know, about 10-12 minutes here. You can see the sugar still kind of hanging around the bottom, dissolved. The bitters are in there from the bottom all the way into the color of the drink, and it's still kind of rising. And there's that little pink hue to the top on the head of the glass of wine. And if you don't have a sugar cube, you can get to this in about 1 minute. So just measure out, you know, use a little less than a tablespoon, I would think, to place in the bottom there. Put your bitters right in the glass and fill with wine, and you'll have sort of what was the Sanka version of a champagne cocktail, a sort of instant Maxwell House version. And it's delicious. So, I mean, if you have good wine and you put bitters and sugar in it, you know, you can't go wrong.
I mean, you could realistically do that with bad wine too, just, you know, bitters.
Right. Hey, we are almost out of time. But I know that people kind of join this. What was your great phrase? To learn to make bubbles for their bubble.
Bubbles,
So
yeah,
if
bubbles with your bubble.
you know, bubbles with your bubble. And so as you all are continuing to kind of party on and relax and toast and cheer the new year in, we have this great playlist that's been arranged for you. There's a QR code coming up. Hereby, a local company has used an algorithm to extrapolate all kinds of great local music for your New Year's Eve. And so give a flash on that screen. We'll drop that in the chat as well. And you guys can party on the rest of the night. And we'll see you back here next week on Boston.com's Cocktail Club with my buddy Jared Sadoian, and we'll be making tequila cocktails.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Haley. This was
Cheers.
a treat.
Thank you. Happy New Year.